Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Charles Smith. Over the last 50 years, he's had an unprecedented career in Tennessee politics, education, and in journalism. Charles, we were talking about the changes in higher education. A lot of what you said began even, or at least were talked about back in the days when you were active in the system. One of the changes in both the changes at UT in terms of decreasing their board and in terms of creating new boards for the regent schools, each having one, is to allow the legislature to appoint members to the board, not just having the governor do all of them. If you had been chancellor again at the Board of Regents, would you have been nervous about that? Would you have been nervous at the UT system about that?
I would have been, and I am. I always felt that, and looking back to my time as Commissioner of Education, the governor appointed the members of the board, and I felt it was important. If you're going to be the governor, you need to have the authority over one of the biggest items in your budget. And I know some states have gone to where they're elected state board members and some where the legislature is involved in the picking. I think it ought to be the governor. Whoever the governor is should have the authority to pick people. But
hadn't the UT board just gotten too big and almost unwieldy? It had so many members, it seemed.
And if you looked at it one way, I would agree with that. But on the other hand, I was with UT 20 years, chancellor of 2 of their campuses during that period of time. And the beauty of at that time, I think it was 24 members. It may have gone up another 2 or 3 after I left. But what you had was representation from all across the state. And each campus had people who were close to the campus who were on the board. That's been lost in this process. Time will tell whether that's good or bad.
A couple of times in your book you mentioned that you had positions within the UT system that might have positioned you to be the next president of the University of Tennessee. That didn't happen, although once you thought it might, but then Lamar Alexander became involved in the process, not in an adversarial position for you, but again sort of intrigue on the Board of Trust?
At that time, yes, I would say that was the beginning of a turn to where the strong president concept began to fade away, not just in Tennessee, but all over the nation. Ed Bowling was president for 18 years, and he was clearly in charge, obviously reporting to a board. At the time that Lamar became president, I was commissioner.
And he was former governor.
And he was former governor, and I was very happy being Commissioner of Education, and so there wasn't an adversarial situation that existed there.
But you got a call asking if you were interested from the board, from a board member, or from a group of the board. Is that right?
There were contacts made, and even before that, even while Governor Alexander was still in office, which was 2-3 years before he became the president, he wanted me to meet with him in Humboldt privately, and he wanted me to be the head of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission. I was chancellor at UT Martin at the time, and I told him I really wasn't interested. I did meet at his request with some of the commission members. I stayed at Martin.
You faced some difficult situations both at UT Martin when you were chancellor there and also where you at University of Tennessee of Nashville. Here, in fact, actually that system here in Nashville was dismantled because of a desegregation ruling. Was it difficult for you to keep that on an even keel, that didn't become a racial situation?
It was very difficult, and I started out at 35. I was a very young chancellor. It was my first time at the top of a ship, running the ship. And yes, it was a very traumatic, but on the other hand, if you combine the loss that John Jay and I had with Winfield Dunn, losing that election, and losing the campus to a federal lawsuit, both of those happened in my 30s. And as I look back, I didn't see it that way at the time. Those were 2 things that really helped me later in my career to face defeat early.
So sometimes being tested early is a good way to help you later in your career.
No question.
You also, later in your career, I think you mentioned this before, worked for a group in Washington pushing the No Child Left Behind program. There have been a number of programs both then and since to try to elevate our public education system across the country. None of them have seemed to quite work. Why not?
I think that one thing is to really make progress in education particularly, and it happens in a lot of fields, you got to have continuity. And it seems like every time a new president comes into office or a new governor comes into office, you want to start from scratch, and I understand that. But I really feel, and I'm a Democrat, and I worked for a Republican administration for the last 6 years of Bush's terms as president. I think his program and the measurement device he used, which was the report card I was in charge of, was probably the most substantial educational reform that I've seen in my lifetime. And we've gotten away from that over the last 2 administrations.
When Winfield Dunn was here some years ago, he brought his book that he wrote, his biography of his life. He said he did it first because he wanted a record for his children and grandchildren. Did you feel that same way with yours? I think you're
Yes.
the great-grandchildren now, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, very clearly. In fact, I've said that to my children as late as last night. I wrote them as we were coming back from Martin, Tennessee in a book signing. I told them that as soon as all of this slows down a little bit, I plan to write a note to every one of the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchild who's not yet old enough to read. And because I feel like that's important. And I want to give credit to my wife, Barbara. She told me, she said, if you don't sell a book, you ought to do this, because every family your family ought to know who you were and what you were, and that's what I'm going to be doing with the notes.
It's a remarkable career. It's a very interesting book. We tried not to tell all the stories here today because we want to lick all the candy off stick. If people want to find the book, they want to buy the book, where do they go find it?
It's on Amazon, both as an ebook and hardback. It's Barnes & Noble online, and Parnassus here in Nashville. Parnassus was very, they did us a great favor by having a signing ceremony, the one that Dr. Dunn came to, and those are 3 sources.
Charles Smith, thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck with your book.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. You're a great friend.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us this week on Inside Politics. Hope you're back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you back here next time. Goodbye.